So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us. Well, we're gonna talk about, and now hold on, I got this sentence. Hold on, I don't know who came up with it. Probably me. Transformative strategies for data center peering and cable investments, comma, current data center and peering landscape in the region, challenges, opportunities to meet the market demands. Now, again, who came up with that idea? Anyway, we're going to talk you through, and I'm really happy and honored to have these senior panelists with me and to share their knowledge with all of you. And that is not only here in this audience, but also out there on video. So I'm going to quickly give them a minute to introduce themselves. And Mark, if I may start with you, please.
Morning, everybody. So my name is Mark Acton. I work for a company called Future Tech, who are a design and engineering consultancy. I'm an engineer myself. I've also had the opportunity to manage some very large data centers, and now really act as an advisor to those that already manage data centers. So I've managed global switch sites. I've managed a number of sites across Asia and the US. Worked for Intel, worked for Dell, worked for the Uptime Institute, and now tell others what to do rather than doing anything useful myself.
Thank you so much. Because I saw technical due diligence. That means you're the one coming in telling them what, how, and when to do it, right?
Yeah, there are two facets to what I do. The first is exactly that. It's telling people how to run data centers, but actually more than that, it's actually looking at data center infrastructure and see if it's been designed and operated correctly. So technical due diligence is more about representing investors or customers going into a site, either looking to buy into that site or use that site as obviously a host for their equipment. So technical due diligence is all about mergers, acquisitions, and investment. So I'll go and look at a site and see effectively whether what it says on the tin represents the contents correctly.
Exactly. Okay, thank you. Alan.
Hello. Hi, Alan Meeks. Good morning, everyone. I'm with Mox Networks. I'm president and COO. Mox, we keep it real simple. We're just a transport provider for the most part. So the impetus of Mox and our network is actually, we're wholly owned by billionaire Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, who's working on curing disease with evidence-based medicine. So it involves genomic and proteomic sequencing, generating a lot of data, and having to move that around the planet. So about 10 years ago, we started his own private telecommunications company. We build fiber, and we light it with DWDM systems, mainly connecting cable landing stations because we use a lot of subsea capacity, data centers, national labs in the US. We also have Mox KK, so we're North America and Japan.
Thank you, and thank you for making it all the way, over the Atlantic.
No problem.
Thank you for joining. Ed?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Halil Kama. I'm from the London Internet Exchange. We're one of the largest internet exchange operators in the world. My role is predominantly looking after the Middle East. I head up the Middle East region, Africa, and Asia at Link, so looking after our exchange points there.
Okay, thank you for joining. And last but not least, Fuad, please. I think we have Fuad, just...
Sorry,
yeah, please.
Fuad from the telco. The telco is fully fledged, or previously the incumbent operator in Bahrain. We also have investments across different jurisdictions, including Jordan, previously in Kuwait, the Channel Islands. The Shore brand is one of the telco's companies. Durago in the Maldives, and some other little islands around. I am head of infrastructure and projects, so I look after both submarine cable capacity, both from an investment and also an operational perspective. When it comes to the capacity on the cable system, we're also the buyers for any capacity on those cable systems or IP capacity that the company requires. Also new to my role is data centers as well as an infrastructure. So we have Global Zone, which we interconnect, or we created as an ecosystem for international interconnects in Bahrain and hopefully in the future regionally as well. One other interesting part that we do is we also have the Manama IX in collaboration with Amsterdam IX, which operates in Bahrain. Just mention it because it's relevant to our discussion.
Okay, thank you so much, and good having you, even if it's virtually. But
Thank you.
thank you for joining, and it's always good to hear, let's say, something from the M6 when somebody from Links is sitting in the panels. But they love each other.
Yes, they
Right?
do.
Absolutely.
There you
A
go.
very friendly environment.
Very friendly environment. Talking about transformative strategies, Mark, if I may kick off with you, just as a helicopter view, the current data center landscape, and of course also the peering landscape. But what are in general the key drivers and challenges and opportunities, and what do you see are the latest developments? I know 4 questions in one, but the floor is yours.
I'll try and get around all of them.
Makes my life easy, you know. I can go now.
Yeah, give me 40 minutes. I think that maybe the biggest challenge we've got in the moment, in many respects, is the media. You know, data centers are destroying the planet.
You believe them?
No, I don't. Obviously, that would be foolish. But I think we have to take attention to what the media is doing, what they're saying about our industry, because if nothing else, governments are taking interest in. You're seeing what's happening in Europe at the moment with the regulations coming in, CSRD, EED, etc. So, that regulatory compliance and the focus on ESG is making it increasingly tough for data center operators. I think the point is being missed that data centers don't really consume power. It's all of us that consume digital services.
They even give power.
Well, they offer power. You're right. So I think there's a narrative there that we're kind of missing as a sector. But going on to the strategy side of things, power is king in data centers. We all know that data centers do consume power, and getting hold of that power at scale is increasingly difficult. You're definitely seeing a movement away from in Europe anyway, the traditional flat markets, Frankfurt, London, Amsterdam, Paris, and obviously Dublin too, towards the sort of tier 2 and tier 3 markets. And that's also very much the case in Africa. We're actually doing quite a bit of work in Africa at the moment. And that is fundamentally being driven by the cables that are coming up the east and west coast of Africa. So the whole telecommunications, subsea cable deployments are absolutely driving data center strategy placement, and will fundamentally affect that region. So there's a lot of data center players looking to get into that region with some degree of urgency in some cases.
Okay, thank you. Fuad, where do you see in the landscape the biggest opportunities and challenges? What in your region? What do you see?
I agree with all of what was just said, but I think for us in this region, actually, the content providers are still the biggest drivers for all the markets, data center markets, peering or IX markets, as well as cable systems. In terms of data centers, the content that they produce or are able to or want to distribute to the end users has to be stored and processed somewhere. And thus the data centers are where they look to do that. The challenge of that is obviously still for this region is more on green energy, which goes back to what was being said about the media saying that data centers consume a lot of power. But I think the drive is the challenge is still get renewable, good sources of renewables, renewable energy. On the peering and IX, I mean, obviously there are focal points. The content that are produced by those big cloud providers or content providers is the focal point for any IX. And the challenge that any IX faces, and especially in this region, is the connectivity to the IXs, and especially more in this region is low-cost connectivity to make it worth, those operators and content providers who always have very challenging pricing targets, let's say, or costing targets to achieve for large bandwidth capacities, but still very, very, very tight. So the region is still trying to catch up with those low-cost connectivity options. In terms of cable systems, I think it's clear that every cable system project that's going on or has been implemented over the past few years, there's always a content provider present on that consortium, or is a a fiber pair customer or a large spectrum customer of that project from the get-go.
Okay, thank you. Alan?
Yeah, in terms of data center trends, I guess, look, the trend of needing more power and power being king is not going anywhere. Regardless of ESG goals and how terrible that industry is at math, I will say, because we're not going to reach the types of goals we need for power without making some exceptions to those things. And probably efficiencies, get us there more than anything. But there's also a limit to how much you can consolidate power too. We're trying to build these monolithic, massive data centers, and at some point we hit a wall, and that can't work. So, we're really a healthcare content company, so we face a lot of the same challenges that your Googles and Microsofts do, in having such large databases living all around the planet, and trying to sync those databases in the exabytes of capacity, and not just sync them, but be able to elastically store and compute. You don't just have to put all the data in one big data center and then go get that data to compute it and then put it back. That's sort of the bespoke nature we're doing it today, but where I see sort of the future, that's still going to be there. That's not going anywhere. Those sites will continue to get bigger until we hit that wall at whatever terawatt sites, wherever we end up in someday. But what we're going to have to do is start spreading out the compute and storage throughout the network in a truly distributed compute and storage fashion. So one of the ways we've been thinking about this for future challenges in our healthcare data is, yes, we have all of our data in big monolithic data centers today, and that's how we do it. But as we're building new long-haul routes, I lovingly call them, instead of amp huts, we call them Tajma huts. We build these really big huts that can house a lot more than just amps. And so the idea is eventually each amp site along the long-haul route becomes a small compute and storage node. And then you can actually distribute your data and compute out across the network. And your data can live sort of everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And this gets around some of the geographical challenges when syncing large databases. And so I think that's probably more of a future trend related to where data centers headed, in my opinion.
Okay. Halil, what do you see around you?
Well, we're obviously a big user of data centers with our partners across the world, right? Equinix Digital Realty, Telehouse, STC or Center 3. And now with IX Africa in Nairobi as well. IX Africa is actually a very interesting use case because they're one of the few data centers in the world that is running on completely renewable energy off the grid. So they're in a unique position, obviously, because it's a brand new data center and it's an emerging market. So in emerging markets, you have the ability to be able to play. It's a lot harder to do that in London. You can't just stick up a ton of solar panels all over the place and request to put it on your neighbor's roof, which is literally what they're doing over there, and paying them a small rent for it. But again, that's an emerging market. For Saudi, it's a different discussion. Energy is on the plus side over there, and that makes the region a lot more interesting for larger players to move into. It gives them a big advantage over Europe, I think, definitely because of the price per kilowatt. It's not something that directly, it does impact us a fraction, but as a user of Internet Exchange deployer, we don't really deal on that side that much. We leave it to the data center to deal with, and then obviously we buy the supply from them. So it's kind of our problem, but it isn't really. We pass on the buck. But nonetheless, we do have ESG compliance to relate to. And as you said, the maths doesn't add up sometimes when you do the addition and subtraction, and then you're a few kilowatts missing on the balance sheet for the ESG figures, right? But everyone is dealing with this dilemma of how to reach it. And to get there, it's not an easy fix. And we don't have the space in Europe to do it. As I said, emerging markets have the space, but they don't have the customers to fill that need yet. So they're on a backlog of, let's say, 5-10 years for Saudi, or 10 years for Africa at least, and at least 5 years also for Saudi. I mean, in Saudi, it's phenomenal, the growth that we're seeing. Our colleagues at Center 3 are selling out data center spaces pre-sold up until 2025. A lot of my time now is spent negotiating for free racks in a data center that we're partners with STC and Center 3, and believe it, I have to negotiate to get a single rack or two off of a customer, and we can only move in once there's been a rack decommissioned and we're partners. We're not an outside customer. So I can only imagine what an outside customer is going through in Saudi to get space. And that all relates back to power and building a larger infrastructure. And over there, they can't keep up with it. The same in Europe. Everyone's coming up with all these smart and wonderful ways of building up DCs, right? Because space is running out. And that also relates to internet exchanges and the use of CDNs. The more CDNs that use it, the end users that use the, whatever it is, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever you may be streaming, that all relays back to data center space in some shape or form and back to the exchange. So, yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that you were mentioning the media and some other people who are, let's say, not the nicest guys and people who talk and write about, you know, the things. But aren't they?
I think they're nice. They're just very uneducated.
But aren't they the ones exactly? Aren't they the ones who actually use their phone as well for everything, right? And do they know what's behind there? No, because how many people, so just a quick survey. If you wake up, you go first for your coffee, tea, water, shower, whatever, or you check your phone first? Be honest. What are we doing? Phone? Coffee. Coffee? You're old school like me.
That's a 1% in the room.
No, but do we agree that we first look at our phones before we do any other thing, right?
It's your alarm clock.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the lousiest excuse I ever heard. It's not only the alarm clock, you know, you just check in what's there. So it is like, it is part of the utilities, right? It is our water, gas, you know, it is what we need, right?
It 100% is a utility. I mean, for Links as the London Internet Exchange, I'm not sure of my data center colleagues in the room, but we're considered critical infrastructure from the UK government. So gas, electric, water, internet.
Yeah.
Essentially.
There you go.
So we go through all the same compliance that an energy provider has to go through, security measures, you name it, auditing, everything is done to the same standard.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, we have to look in Denmark, please. We have to, of course, be aware of, you know, and to be as sustainable as possible, whatever. But we are hitting a certain wall. And I know there are data centers who, you know, with the warmth of the cooling system, yes, the heat coming from the cooling system, they use this heat and give this to a school, you know, close by, so they can heat. So there are these things and there are these projects, but no, I'll let you talk.
No, I think I was going to go back to your previous point about the media. I mean, there was a classic piece of irony with the BBC about a year ago when they published something about dirty data centers and the challenge with streaming. The irony was it was available for about 6 months on iPlayer, you know. So, you know, people don't get it. And I think it you know, again, one message we have to get out as an industry, as a sector, and this is true about the digital infrastructure sector generally, is all of us are creating the demand, whether it's on a business basis or personal basis. And I think what we need to do is make people more aware of the digital choices they're making and the impact that then has on energy consumption. And at the moment, with the public, there is absolutely zero connection with those two facts. You know, you'll get green activists complaining about data center usage, sitting outside an event in Ireland, streaming the protest. Come on, guys. You know,
And they have a big crypto wallet too.
There you go. Exactly.
Of course. No, you're right. Fout, join us. What do you think? What are your? What do you think?
I don't have much to add actually to that. There was very comprehensive, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but obviously, I mean, everyone picks up their phone in the morning. I think anyone who doesn't is no longer normal. So yeah, you're consuming traffic or data traffic before you're consuming, you know, water or coffee or whatever it is you like to do in the morning. So it's a part of life. You can't get away from it. It's in everything you do. The fact that you're, you know, the data center, the cables, the internet, the Wi-Fi, the 5G, 4G, whatever it is part of everything that we do today. As one of the panelists was saying, it's part of critical infrastructure. I don't think we've reached that level of it is. We do consider ourselves critical infrastructure, but we don't have those kind of regulations around critical infrastructure in Bahrain. But definitely, if something is, I mean, we had an incident in Bahrain yesterday where there was DDoS attacks happening across the country for different reasons, and everyone was talking about it, and it was all over the media that it was all because of cable in the Red Sea and all of that, which actually really didn't have anything to do with it, but because those cable cuts happened over a week ago and nobody knew about it. But yesterday, because there were defects and nobody really understood what that was, it was all over the media that the cable cuts are what's causing the slowness in the internet across the country. So yeah, it's so many messages, so many different things that you can talk about.
Absolutely. Halil, question for you. How can peering at the local internet exchange lead to improve the customer experience? What are you going to do about it? That's actually
There's lots of things that we do about it, but it's kind of morphing. The more I'm actually on going to the start of my career when I was on panels on the earlier days, the need has changed and shifted, and it's becoming a lot more closer and closer to the end user. Again, to service the CDNs, to service the mobile demand, right? That is essentially what is happening. Everyone is getting closer to the customer, if you like it or not. Everyone's in a B2B environment, mostly here in the room, but we're all servicing the end users, essentially. That is the fact of the matter. They're the ones that are paying the bills for us to survive in the industry as such, and we're all doing pretty well from data. So an internet exchange provides connectivity at a local level. The trend, or should we say from a mature market going into developing markets, what you're seeing is in the developing markets, they want to bring data closer. So that's why we're, as an example, opening up in Nairobi, or have opened up in Nairobi. One of the huge draws there is that you've got a large population that uses there's a lot of mobile phone users. Majority of the country has a mobile phone, so they're using data in some shape or form. Even in Kenya, that is their primary mode of communication, payment, speaking to loved ones, getting rounds of the country. That, for them, is their everything, basically. And there is a demand to bring the data closer, rather than tromboning it all the way up to Europe and then back down into Africa. We're trying to condense it locally to service.
Still 94%?
It is,
the
yeah.
content from Africa goes up to Europe and comes back again.
It's dropped down now, and I think it's in the 80s or so. But yeah, it has gone down a bit, and that's purely from everyone in this room or at this conference helping to bring content locally. The content players are all forecasting 2024, 2025, 2026 to open up either local caches or physical POPs in parts of Africa that they wouldn't normally be in before. Everyone traditionally has been in South Africa without default. All the names that you can think of, Amazon, Meta, everyone that you can think of, right, has been in South Africa, and it's a no-brainer. It's a stable country. The infrastructure is there. They do obviously have blackouts, but diesel generators help. Now they're looking inwards. Where can we go? Ghana, Kenya, other parts of Africa. Obviously, Egypt has been a great success story there. The connectivity that's coming out of there is quite fascinating, how those guys are instrumental in that part of it. But that's almost cut off from the top of Africa. But for my discussions personally that I'm having around Kenya, it's very interesting. And that's what keeps me motivated, definitely. Because you're seeing, rather than where we are in Europe, where everything is stable and the growth is just adding on a few 100 gig ports here or there, it's not that exciting. In Kenya, we've got all kinds of weird and wonderful challenges that we have to work out. Regulators, bringing in capacity, subsea cables, as Fahad's mentioning, the cutting of a cable last week, that impacts us directly. So I have my team messaging me at midnight saying this cable's down, are we impacted? Looking at all kind of various metrics. That you don't really get too much in London. So yeah, it keeps things interesting.
It is an interesting area. In fact, and it's public knowledge. So Future Tech designed the IX Africa sites. So Kenya, obviously, Nairobi, but going into Uganda, DRC, Mozambique, these areas are all building up rapidly. There's 1 billion people in Africa, which, who aren't really being served at the moment. The big thing people say in Africa, though, it's not just the cables going around the edge, around the coast. It's the penetration into Africa that's important as well, which allows things to develop.
Which is quite a difficult topic, actually. And
I was going to say that there's a similar problem, actually, to Africa and even North America to that point, terrestrial networks. So we have terrestrial networks in the US, but we have a lot of space. And those networks were all built from the early 90s to the early 2000s. They're old, and they're really expensive to rebuild. And we're piggybacking on right-of-ways. Now, maybe we have a difference in security environment in the States, but it's still a lot of money to build a long ways. And while peering, BGP and routing can only be as efficient as its underlying connections, right? And so without more terrestrial and subsea connections, the peering is at a loss.
Absolutely. And you're in the US, where it's a single country under a single regulation. The states change, okay, there's different regulations for states, but in general, the telco regulation is pretty flat across the board. So if you imagine going into Africa and every country literally has completely separate regulations to each one, or they're trying to up one another, that's a complete different ball game altogether.
Geography matters too. Africa's 5 stacked plateaus.
And we
it's
can
difficult
change it.
geography.
it is
really
what it is, right?
Just geographically stacked plateaus, right? And so going from inland to the coasts to meet subsea cables is a lot different than, say, the western coast of the United States. Flat, easy access. Yeah.
There are now terrestrial routes that go across the...
Coming.
There are terrestrial routes that go across Africa rather than just go around the Horn of Africa. In light of what's going on at the moment, there are organisations that have those terrestrial routes, like we are one of them. We have quite a few that go, so it avoids those cables which are affected, and there are longer distances. God, this is echoey.
It is echoing. All right. Also talking about investments, and I know you all do this. And Ford, yeah, you're putting money out of your pocket as well. I know to invest and just to make sure that through the whole ecosystem we improve and we and meet as much as possible the customer experience and make money. Let's be honest as well. So, what for you? I mean, and I know you're quite busy with this, Mark. From an investment point of view, where do you think along the nicest, biggest, most beautiful opportunities? How much money do you need?
Yeah, exactly. If I had that crystal ball, I probably wouldn't be here. It's a difficult one. I think again, you've got to look at where the power is available. You've got to look at where the power's cheap. And you've got to look at where the cables are being laid. A lot of it's about population density. Again, looking at Africa again, you've got 1 billion people who are currently underserved. So obviously the big content providers...
Okay, but how many landing stations do we have in Africa?
Oh, I couldn't give you a number.
No. So there you go. I mean, the cables are so long, but they're not hitting every country. And then we have the non-electric. So
You're absolutely right, but it's no secret where those landing stations are, and you just look at where they're coming in, and that's where the developments are happening, broadly speaking. But it's interesting. I think, again, I'm just talking about Africa here. What you're seeing in Africa is local investment coming in. Historically, it's been Western investment, and now you're getting local investors who are putting their money into those sites. The content providers are driving demand, but actually in many cases they're going into co-location. Their first footprint is in co-location. They're not necessarily building their own sites. They're taking that first step, offsetting the risk, letting others build, and then clearly as demand grows, they will almost certainly build their own estate, as they've done in Europe, frankly, exactly the same. But now you are seeing the big content providers, the hyperscalers going into tier 2 and tier 3 markets across Europe and beyond. Again, co-location initially, possibly building bigger. So you've got some hotspots like Milan, like Barcelona. Egypt is coming up as well. Portugal, where the landing stations come in. Morocco, Ghana. You've got those areas which are kind of little hotspots, and that is where I'll be looking to invest if I had anything like the money that's needed.
Okay. Alan?
Yeah, I mean, back to power being king and that sort of driving everything, you're going to have to look at, again, geography and playing to the strengths of the geography. Look, in the U.S., the Southwest United States is great for solar given current green tech, but we don't have any high voltage direct current lines that could bring that power to the coasts. So probably some good investment in data center in the Southwest United States would make sense, right? But also the Southern United States if you look at the Henry Hub and gas pricing in the United States, we price it like a waste product there. So obviously the future of power is going to have to be some type of natural gas, CCS, capture and storage potentially. So I think we just have to look and play to the strengths of each geography as it relates to power and meeting those demands. And then everything else just sort of folds in. So in my mind, new long haul, like I've spoken about before, in the US I think is sorely needed. We operate Sienna DWDM systems. The new cards just came out, WaveLogic 5Es this year. We're slotting those on our systems. And I operate a route between Chicago and Seattle that's 4,400 kilometers with no OEO. So cards at either end with the newest technology should be able to get 800 gig per carrier wave. Mm-hmm. We get about 350 to 400 on that route. The fiber was built in 1998. It's old fiber. I'd have to put in 3 or 4 regens to get that type of capacity. So the new WaveLogic 6Es come out next year. They're supposed to do 1.2 terabits per carrier wave. That's not going to happen on old fiber. So unless that long haul fiber is replaced with ultra low loss class, the new equipment's not going to do what it's supposed to do.
It's not going to happen.
So I think the investment, we need to plow more money into the ground in long haul fiber as it relates to the strengths of power per geography.
And just to give people an idea, how much would that fiber cost to do that deployment?
So through the United States, at least $2 billion to rebuild like NFL city to NFL city around the United States. And that's assuming I have, a natural gas pipeline right of way, because we're piggybacking on right of ways in telco. Yeah. It's not like governments just hand us right of ways to build fiber on. We have to go talk to gas companies, rail companies. These people move energy and they move freight. They don't care about telco. So we are the redheaded stepchild when it comes to utility. We want to be financed like a utility. But we don't want to be regulated like one, right? And that's the difficulty in building fiber.
Okay. What? On the investment side, what's...
And then, I was going to talk a little bit more about submarine cable investments. So I think
exactly.
The market and generally the whole industry is so focused on trying to find alternative routes to the Red Sea at the moment. It's nothing to do with what's happened, more recently, but for a couple of years now, everyone's been trying to go further north, get from east to west, basically, over a route that doesn't pass through the Red Sea or possibly even through the Mediterranean. It's such a huge opportunity for everyone. I mean, you could even charge a premium for it at the moment, but everybody needs it. It's when you have one incident in 3 or 4 geographies, it could wipe out so much connectivity that everyone feels it, like we're feeling it. Have been feeling it over the past week. So and everyone gets very nervous when things go wrong in the Red Sea or in the south part of the Mediterranean, let's say. So it's if anyone can get their head around how to invest across Saudi, Jordan, further north, Syria, so forth, where are problematic, geographies, obviously. But if you can get a cable across there and get from Europe essentially to the Middle East and then to Asia, you've got currently one of the best routes that anyone could dream for. So
is what we would call the holy grail, right? In
at the moment, it is, I think, yes, for the region.
Yeah. No, absolutely. All right, Mark. A quick one. Partnerships. Is that something as a strategy? Would that work? Is there a demand for that?
Absolutely. I mean, I guess it's
happening.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, very much so. We talked about the content providers being involved in subsea cable deployment. Yeah, absolutely. So, there's a vested interest in obviously partnerships. As long as it becomes a win-win, then absolutely, and they certainly are happening. I mean, my sector is certainly much more on the data center side, but there are enormous partnerships on that basis, and not least because obviously the amount of funding required to put that infrastructure into place is just huge. So it's not always possible to do it as a single agent.
Yeah, try to book a ship now to lay your subsea cable. In 5 years.
Partnership, definitely with public-private partnership is going to be important. As we look at capital costs tripling over the last 3 years, and they're probably going to triple in the next 3 years.
Critical infrastructure, we said it was, right? So it needs to be.
It needs to be. And
public,
this is, I mean, the free money that we've all been playing with the last 15 years essentially was, boomer retirement money. That was 70% of private equity, and the boomer generation's retiring on average as of last year. So that's why capital costs are tripling.
By the way, yeah? I'm a boomer, so...
But that's what's causing capital to skyrocket. I mean, the cost of capital. And it really is a demographic math issue, right? And so, in the US, we're going to see that escalate through 2034. We just have to wait for the millennials' kids to grow up and enter the workforce before that starts to flatten out. So, I mean, we're going to be in an extended period of tight capital, and the green build-outs, especially when it comes to energy, are just more capital intensive up front. I mean, coal is very dirty, but up front the cost is not huge. It's in the cost of fuel over time. Green projects and the current green tech, everything's up front. And so I think that's going to be a real challenge as we go forward in investment is, the cost of capital is higher, so we have to be more targeted about the investment. But there's never been more of an industrial digital build-out need than right now, especially with AI. As we do this stuff in healthcare, we're talking with chip makers, data center operators, and then ourselves building cables, and we're trying to come up with reference architectures that incorporate all of those things up front, because we see the amount of GPUs we're going to need to compute genomes, and it's massive. It's absolutely massive.
Absolutely.
For investment parts in the West, certainly agree. The interest rates are going up, so we've lived on free money now for, as you said, 10 to 15 years. Now you have to run a business that actually makes a profit. So imagine that. Before you could pay back a 0% interest, well, what was it, 1%, 2%? So if you're doing maybe 3% return on your business, you can pay back that loan. Now you're borrowing money at 5, 6, 8, 10%. So you've actually got to make a 15, 20% margin. And people are reconsidering now all kinds of deployments, looking at CapEx a lot more tightly than they would before. That's in the West. In where we're operating in Saudi, it is a concern, but not so much, because you have the oil revenue that has been coming in for the petrodollar for the last 50 years or so. So now they're deploying that capital for the 2030 vision. And as long as a senior executive in the Saudi government told me, as long as we're not losing money, we're happy to spend. So they're not borrowing it because obviously they have.
They don't have to.
Exactly my point.
They don't have to.
They don't have to. So the investment speed and rate is a lot more different to the rest of the world. And as that government official rightly said, as long as we're not losing money, it's fine. So that puts them at an advantage for the next 5 to 10 years at least against the rest of the world. And they certainly look at partnerships and deployment of capital also very closely as well, although they're building megalithic projects and subsea capacity data centers. But the cost of money is quite different, and that plays a huge part in all of that.
Okay. Looking at the time like this, and I see that the people are getting hungry, for lunch. So let's get into the closing statement. So, Fuad, if I may start with you, what would be your takeaway for the audience? Thoughts, dreams, whatever. We just talked about the Holy Grail, huh? We did. So
Yeah,
I know.
that would be a dream
perfect.
for sure.
I know.
But I think, so it goes back to what we were saying earlier about everything being digital, and digital is very much a hype word at the moment. Everything is about fintech or this tech or that tech, and it all goes back to it in some form or another being digital or accessible through a digital platform. So yeah, that's where we're going.
Okay.
We're we're the platform for that, be it telcos, IXs, or data centers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Alil?
For me, my takeaway with everyone would be, well, working closely with your partners, evaluating partners more closely and following the data trail, shall we say, so following CDNs. I'd encourage people to look at them much more closely than they do. People in the data world already do, but that's really the main driver of traffic. So for me, that would be my parting bit of knowledge for everyone.
Okay. Alan?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just going to have to make some choices in the future about what we want, because we can't have everything. And I think all of this comes down, at this point in our industry, to semiconductors and the different classes of semiconductors and which ones we're going to be able to make in the future. I think that's an important point. Looking at NVIDIA's new H100, 80 billion transistors on a 5-nanometer chip, and what it takes to build that chip, and how many of those you need to support things like AI, it gets complicated. It gets complicated very fast, and it involves, raw industrial materials from the Russian space to the Dutch doing lithography to the Koreans etching
ASML.
wafers.
ASML.
Yeah, ASML, exactly. And this is a concert of 13 countries in a security arrangement that's existed for the last 75 years, right? And that's why we're able to make those chips. Well, the small ones are the hard ones to make. The medium range, not as hard. The 90 nanometer and above, easy. But what do you need them for? I mean, AI, your smartphone, your laptop, all of those are small chips. So that the ability to make those, we can't make them all. We don't have enough resources to make it all. We don't have the right security arrangements to make all of them. So I think we'll just have to make some choices, what we want. And probably your IoT industry slows down a little bit, because I don't think we're going to stop making the small important chips. We probably stop making the larger ones that are less important. Your singing washing machine, your singing blender, that's probably going to go to the wayside in the future. And I think
Finally, my washing machine will shut up. Finally. Thanks, Alan. Last but not least, Mark, a takeaway.
I'm going to go back to something Alan said earlier, follow the power. Whatever we're doing with digital infrastructure, we need power, and we need lots and lots more of it, whether it's AI or anything else. And that isn't going to change. Also agreeing with Alan, it's going to be about choices. It's going to be about choices on power. ESG is with us. Europe is taking a bit of a lead, but other regions are going to follow suit. I think a lot of people are watching what's happening with the European Commission, with CSRD and EED, etc. The Commission themselves have said they're on a 15-year path to regulate the industry. So at the moment, they're collecting data, and we're at the very, very thin end of what could be a very large wedge. So, watch this space. Again, a 15-year plan. And I think, we are absolutely going to look at where the power is, whether it's renewable power, whether it's hydro, whether it's geothermal up in Iceland or wherever, and even now nuclear. You're getting a lot of debate about bringing nuclear back. Small modular reactors associated with data centers. So follow the power, and going to that point, the capital investment required on nuclear reactors. Wow. That's that from me.
Okay, thank you so much. Question.
My name is Yusuf. I'm from Mantel. I have two questions, or 2 points to add. One about the cable cuts, which is happening in Red Sea. Actually, the cable cuts, what's happening in that area, it's not only, the issue of, it is temporary, the issue in the Red Sea. But the amount of the cable cut which is happening in that area, on that region, it is in the other side. Let's say in the Arab Sea or the one. So we cannot, say this is a problem, because it is only due to the certain, issues in the area. And one more thing, which is you talked about the investment. You talked about the Africa in Egypt and the other side, but you didn't talk about the downside. You says where is Somalia, which is the gate of the, I mean, Africa from the other side to the Ethiopia and the. So I don't know if there is any point on that.
Well, I know there's interest in Ethiopia right now. I've not heard of anything in Somalia. Maybe it's a little bit too difficult, but Ethiopia certainly, and up that side. Mozambique again.
Yeah, I know it is not stable in Somalia, but I think we have a side which is in the Somalia. It is can be, I mean, started as a business. I mean, on the submarine. Yeah. It's a gate. I think you know the Somalia. It's how it's covering the, I mean, the seaside. I mean.
I think, frankly, there's opportunity for everybody. You know, I think the whole region is going to grow. So.
Okay.
I was going to add on the Red Sea part, the comment that, so I mean, just to clarify, my point about Red Sea is not that it is a bottleneck today for different reasons, and it has been problematic further north towards Egypt. But the industry needs an alternative. The world needs an alternative, being, you know, with everything that's going digital. So if you want to have connectivity, the alternatives need to be there. You can't have a single point of failure, which is Egypt, which is Yemen today. I mean, it's affecting not just the cable cuts that have happened today or are currently in place, but even future projects are currently at a bit of a standstill because of you know, Yemen and Eritrea and so forth. So you can't be the industry can't be held ransom due to not having alternatives to certain geographies, I would say.
Okay.
That's why I know that Omantel is as well investing a huge amount of money in the sea cables and whatever. So, and I know this, and also on the data center side, especially also in Salalah.
Yeah,
so
we have
I know.
cable which is going G2A.
Yep.
Going to Somalia, and this is stable. We had, I mean, experience one. We had an experience, I mean, like one cable cut, but stable. And only we have an issue to go to the other branch in that cable because of the, I mean, the issue in the Somalia itself.
Yeah.
But I think it is a gate to the.
No. And guys, as much as money in there, invest as much as you can. Start today because you're ready in 10 years, hopefully. That's it. Have lunch. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Fuad. Thank you, Alan. And thank you, Halil. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.